Hello my friends, this is a long overdue update to my top free VR games list. This is a massive roundup covering the top 100 free VR games of all time. All the links to these are in the video description below. Now let's get started right away by covering some action games. Trickster VR Horde Attack is a small wave shooter sample of the larger game Trickster VR. But even though this is just a small wave shooter example of a larger game, it's one of the most highly polished wave shooters I've ever seen. It's obviously based within a fantasy setting, and in between waves you can choose different weapons or equipment.
Beautiful.
This game features both sliding movement and teleporting movement. It's your choice. If you're tired of the usual sci-fi themed wave shooter we keep seeing over and over again, then I definitely recommend giving this one a shot.
That's right, get in the zone!
Wolfenstein 3D VR. It's the original Wolfenstein 3D ported to VR in pretty much a perfect way. It keeps all of the nostalgia for the original, complete with all the sounds, music, and flat 2D enemies, but also has a few new surprises like opening doors with your hands, and enhanced blood effects on the ceiling and floor. It features both sliding movement and teleporting movement. If you enjoyed the original game, then this is a must play. It's super fun. Propagation VR is way too scary for me to play. Giant spiders crawling at me in the dark? That's gonna be a no from me. But I cannot deny how well made and how popular this game is. If you love horror action games, then I think you'll really enjoy this. MSI Electric City Core Assault is a straightforward city defense bullet hell shooter. Alien ships are arriving through green portals, and you need to fend them off as best you can. The ship you control stays with your hand, so it's like you're holding a small toy ship that can fire lasers and missiles. It's almost like the classic Missile Command arcade game on steroids. It's a great casual action game. In Zombie Hobby VR, colorful polygonal zombie men are approaching from UFOs to come eat your brains. But thankfully, you have a handful of respawning objects to throw at them to keep them away. It usually takes at least a few hits to bring down a zombie, so the difficulty actually ramps up rather quickly, especially since you're dead instantly as soon as they touch you. Some items have special properties, like throwing the clock will slow down time. There's 4 levels to choose from, all with unique props to throw. See how long you can survive to earn a high score. Overboard features the timeless tale of man versus shark. At first you start with just simple harpoon guns, but as the battle progresses, both you and the sharks will gain epic upgrades. Eventually you'll be upgraded from simple propellers, to wings, to jetpacks, and much more. Things get even more ridiculous and over the top, things that I don't want to spoil here. Once I started playing, I had trouble putting it down. It's super addictive and absolutely worth playing. There are 6 unlockable maps and 3 difficulty settings. Dead Ground Arcade is a straightforward and chaotic 180 arcade shooter. The gameplay couldn't be more simple. On each hand you have a gun, and you need to shoot down the constant stream of zombies running at you. Reloading each gun is automatic, just drain all your ammo for a refill. There's 3 unlockable levels, and it also features multiplayer, but personally I didn't see any multiplayer games available when I played. Boiling Steel Preface. This is a combat and exploration sampler of the full game Boiling Steel. You get to experience a handful of levels from the game, but this sampler is actually quite impressive in scope. The combat itself features a unique weapon handling system which I haven't seen before. You choose which weapons you want by squeezing the grip buttons and pulling the weapon hologram to expand and transform it into reality. After you're empty, simply drop the gun and then create a new one. It's a pretty cool weapon system. To me, the action was mostly about switching weapons quickly based on the enemies you're facing, like deciding on long-range or close-range weapons based on the current threat. In each level, you're granted random weapon loadouts and special abilities, as opposed to the full game where you can customize them to your liking. There's 4 difficulty levels, so there's significant replayability here. One playthrough on easy can take you around 30 minutes, so with the increased difficulty levels, the gameplay can really stack up. For a free action game, it's fantastic. Definitely give this one a go. GunsnStories Preface VR. This is a wave shooter within a Wild West theme.
Double kill.
The game begins with an animated comic book style narration, but you can skip that if you want to. The game has you standing in one place, with waves of riffraff trying to take you down. One unique element in this is the ability to deflect incoming bullets with your pistols. I find that pretty fun. This game also has a nice visual design. All the characters and environment feel like they could be in a Pixar movie. It's great looking, casual fun. Have you ever wished for a game like Pistol Whip, but with swords instead of guns? Then Brisk Square is for you. Continually slide forward while slicing at all the obstacles and enemies in your way. Besides slicing, you have 3 powers: slow down time, telekinesis, and firing a laser from your hand. Each of these powers take time to recharge. There's quests and goals to achieve, gameplay modifiers like Pistol Whip has, and coolest of all is a skill tree that allows you to upgrade your special abilities, like having a faster cooldown for the slow motion. For a free and intense runner that will get your legs moving, it's totally worth the download. When you take a look at the Steam page for Super Raft Boat VR, you might not think much of it at first glance, but this game is a perfect example of not judging a book by its cover. It's a roguelite shooter where you must survive waves of sea creatures while building your Super Raft boat. Normally, I don't even like roguelites that much, but I found the gameplay to be incredibly addictive and fun. And now moving on to some multiplayer games. I probably don't need to mention VR Chat, you've almost certainly played this before, but I would be remiss to not include it on this list. If by chance you haven't played it before, it's basically all about hanging out in virtual worlds with other folks and chatting. There are some mini games you can play, but it's really all about mingling with others. It boasts an impressive player base, since VR isn't required, so if you want to hang out with others in the virtual world, then this will certainly fit the bill.
Do you agree this game gets weirder and weirder?
And of course, I need to mention Rec Room. If VR Chat is the king of hanging out, then Rec Room is the king of minigames, like paintball, frisbee golf, laser tag, and much more. My personal favorite are the co-op quests. Team up with up to 3 other people to make it through miniature combat campaigns with various themes like medieval fantasy or pirate quests. Rec Room is massive and it's getting bigger all the time, and the fact that it's free is amazing. PokerStarsVR is a high-end social poker game. What really impressed me is the level of polish and everything inside the game. There are many props you can summon, like selfie cams and smoking pipes. This kind gentleman gave me a free pipe and smoke during my first game. Thank you.
No problem.
There's no other card game like it right now. If you're a poker fan, then I highly recommend it. War Thunder is a free VR game that requires either a gamepad or keyboard and mouse. It's a World War II combat game that lets you take control of a plane or a tank. It's multiplayer, but there are always people playing online as it doesn't require VR. It's easy to pick up and start playing, but if you're really into it, there's more to explore, like unlockables and customized game modes. Protonwar was once a paid game that has recently become free. It's a fast-paced multiplayer first-person shooter. When I first fired this up, I couldn't believe there were still dedicated servers available with quite a few people playing. You can move via sliding or teleporting, but when I played on the Reverb G2, I was only able to teleport. Run around trying to kill people while picking up various power-ups and weaponry. Optionally, you can also switch to a lightsaber, which is always fun. This plays in both VR and flat screen, so it's much easier to get a game going with your friends because it's free for anyone with a PC. When hosting games, you can choose to fill in with bots as well. For some fast-paced shooting action with your pals, it's totally worth a download.
5 minutes remaining.
You may recall when I featured Deadshot Heroes in my Hidden Gems series. It has been rebranded as Warriors of Titus, and there's now a separate free-to-play version. It's a first-person shooter MOBA-style game, including both solo play and multiplayer. The goal is to take down all of the opposing team's towers, while also defending your towers against their advances.
Enemy tower has been destroyed.
In the pre-game lobby, you choose the class of your bot as well as the bots of your allies and opponents. If you're playing multiplayer, then each player chooses for themselves. Besides the bots of yourself and your allies, smaller minion bots are automatically spawned from the towers. So in the heat of combat, there's a lot of bots to keep track of.
That's a lucky shot.
Also important to know is that the game provides a variety of locomotion options, which is great because you'll need to be moving a lot. One small design choice that I rather enjoyed is that when the enemy is killed, you get a chance to score a power-up or bonus by shooting targets that fly up like fireworks that come from the enemies. This free version has fewer heroes to choose from and no achievements, but the gameplay itself is all there. Gorilla Tag. And as you can probably tell by the title, it's a game of tag between gorillas. One gorilla is infected with a lava color, and they're trying to infect other gorillas to spread the love to all the other players. You move in the game by propelling yourself along surfaces, mostly the ground. Later on, you can try to master the art of wall climbing as well. It's a surprisingly strong arm workout. You'll definitely get tired after your first couple of rounds. You also want to be mindful of your play space. This is one of those games where you can easily get lost in the action and accidentally hit something in real life. Hop into Gorilla Tag to get your heart rate up and become king of the jungle. Cards and Tankards.
Nice.
It's a social tabletop card game with satisfying VR interactions, deep strategy, and a surprisingly large player base. This reminded me a lot of Magic the Gathering, but it also brings to the table a significant amount of unique gameplay elements. Each player starts with 30 health, and your goal is to take down the health of the other player to 0. To do that, you spend mana to cast spells, primarily to summon creatures on the battlefield to attack and defend. When it's your turn to attack, push your creatures forward to choose who should be attacking. If you're defending, you do the same thing to choose defenders. Flip the hourglass to say you're done, and see how it all plays out. There is a lot more to the gameplay, but that's the very basics of each turn. There's definitely a learning curve here, and thankfully, the community is very welcoming. I found a lot of the people to be chill and just enjoying the experience together. The taverns themselves feel really cozy with a nice laid-back atmosphere. For movement within the tavern, there's both sliding and teleporting. When not in the middle of a battle, you can customize your deck, enjoy a virtual drink at the bar, or just have some laughs and observe. For a free game, I found this to be truly exceptional. We Were Here is a 2-player game, and both players are required. One person plays in a library location, the other plays in a dungeon location, and both of you are communicating via CB radio and need to communicate together to figure out puzzles to eventually team up and beat the game. VR is not required to play this, so between the two of you playing together, one can be in VR, the other in flat screen, or both in flat screen. This is a really cool and challenging 2-player co-op game. Vertical Shift is a high-energy grappling hook and flying obstacle course through futuristic arenas. It's pretty new and still in early access, but there's a lot of fun to be had in here. Next up, strategy games. Lazerbait is a planetary conquest strategy game. You start with your army of ships orbiting one planet. You then take over all the nearby neutral planets to produce more ships, and eventually face off against the enemy AI players. There are also many options for you to customize, like number of enemies, map size, difficulty, and more. This game is very fun, a must-play for any strategy fan.
Welcome to the team at any rate. Kick back for now.
The Red Stare. You are a secret agent in the 1950s, and it's up to you to spy on the building across your window and figure out who the communist spies are. You receive information via your phone and fax machine, finding clues in case files, and taking pictures that you can fax to your boss. It's all about observation and deduction. It can be a real brain teaser at times. This game uses motion controllers very well. After taking pictures, you can arrange them on the chalkboard and write down notes to help you deduce who the spies are. It's a challenging and very well-made spy game.
This is a picture of the guy in the parking lot, isn't it? It's likely he ran off with the briefcase.
The Get-Up puts you in the role of a god in ancient Egypt, and you need to ensure that pyramid construction keeps chugging along. It's a multitasking challenge that requires quick thinking and reflexes. You want to get as many stones pushed uphill as possible, and the workers can only push stones on top of logs. So you need to get more logs from trees or move logs to the front of the line. And if there are too many stones for the number of workers you have, they'll get crushed. Later, you'll have to deal with hot rocks, and you'll need to find jars of water to cool down the rocks. Everything is highly polished in this game, and I found the gameplay quite addictive. Vectorwave is a tower defense game in a Tron-like visual style. If you've ever played tower defense games before, then the gameplay here is just as you would expect. But they made some nice, unique choices when making this for VR. For example, on your left hand is a rotating menu that shows you all of the towers you can build. Using your other hand, you grab from the menu the tower you want to build, and then you drop it onto the playing field for it to get built. The maps are rather large, so you need to move yourself by pressing the thumbpad and then dragging your hand like you're dragging yourself along the level. You also have some weapons that you can fire yourself. I really like the visual style they've designed here. It feels just right for a tower defense game, in my opinion. I'm not usually drawn to tower defense games, but I enjoyed playing this one. I say it's worth a download. In Your Face TD is another tower defense game, but this has the unique spin of also being a first-person shooter. During the waves, when enemies are marching forward, you can reposition wherever you are and personally take fire at the robots or throw bombs at them. It's also fun to teleport on top of the towers that you've built for a new perspective. This mix of tower defense and first-person shooter is a really interesting mix. I highly recommend you check it out.
Alright now, let's get ready to rock and roll!
In Vroom Kaboom, it's 2 vs 2 Mad Max-style demolition derby combat, where you want to take down the structures of the other team. If you play single player, then the game will fill in with bots. Press left trigger to bring up your menu of cards, and then select a card and place it on the road to summon that vehicle. Steer the vehicle with the trigger and try to pick up power-ups as you drive toward the enemy base. Pressing the thumbpad will activate the special power of the vehicle, like jumping high or firing a weapon. The team that demolishes all of the structures of the other team win the game.
Focus!
I found it all pretty exciting and really well put together. It's an interesting mix of demolition combat and strategy. I was surprised by how much I got into this. Servator is a VR remake of the classic game The Sentinel, which was available on DOS and Amiga systems way back in the day. It's a strategy puzzle game. You start at the bottom of a landscape, and the Servator is at the top of the landscape. The goal is to build enough boulders to stand on so you are above the Servator. But to do that, you'll need energy. You harvest energy from crystals. Once you have enough energy, you can create robots for you to teleport to. So after you have enough energy, get to the top of the level, build some boulders, and then stand on top of the boulders to be above the Servator. It has a great retro feel, it's like you're playing a Tron game. The game page says there's 10,000 levels to play in, so if you're a fan of the original, or this looks appealing to you, you could find a ton of gameplay in here. Axegend Episode I. It's a wave-based defense game, and in between attack rounds you get to set up traps to stop the marching enemies. You're also given melee and throwing weapons, so you yourself can cause damage as well. I found this game to have its own kind of quirky charm in the traps and enemy behaviors. And if it isn't obvious by now, this recommendation comes with an arachnophobia warning. If you like silly and random humor in your games, then you really need to try this. There's 3 difficulty modes, and there's lots of movement settings and comfort options if you get motion sick.
I blow everything up for you.
ORKANA Conflict VR Demo is a rather sizable free sampler of this real-time strategy game. This is a legit and feature-complete RTS game with base building, resource gathering, unit grouping, special abilities, and more. This free demo will provide almost an hour of gameplay, and if you've been craving a solid RTS in VR, then you really need to try this out. For VR, there's no other strategy game like it right now. Normally, wave-based defense games bore me pretty quickly, but I really have to admit that VR Hero Sentry brings a lot of new ideas to the genre. It surprised me quite a few times, and I think it's worth a look. You can choose between playing as a hunter or a wizard. The hunter uses a bow and arrow, the wizard commands an owl as the main attack. The hunter can summon a wolf to assist, the wizard can summon a spider, and so obviously, this game comes with an arachnophobia warning. Both classes also have secondary powers to choose from on the right hand, like for the hunter, it's magical arrows. In between waves, you can upgrade all of these powers and your armor. But the really interesting bit is that you can spend cash to recruit NPCs to fight alongside you, both knights on the ground and archers from above. You can't command them during battle, but having a small army fight with you makes it almost feel like an RTS. However, during the boss battles, your men will run away like brave Sir Robin, so the boss fights are all up to you. Top it all off with nice environmental graphics, and I think this is a real hidden gem of a defense game. If you don't mind the spiders, I say give this a go. The only mode of movement is sliding, and there's no comfort settings. And now, some free adventure games. Bow to Blood: Last Captain Standing. In Bow to Blood, you play as an airship captain competing in a winner-takes-all reality show.
At the end of this match, one of you will be eliminated.
During the competitions, you stand at the bridge of your mighty ship, controlling where you fly and where the cannons fire. If things get too close for your cannons, you can grab your sidearm to fire as well. You have 2 crew members at your command, and you'll need to decide which station they should occupy depending on the situation you're in.
What you need? Taking over sensors.
You'll also manually divert resources to special abilities on your ship by moving cubes on your dashboard. The combat can get really intense. For me, the challenge ramped up really quickly. In between matches, you'll return to your private abode. It's there that you'll collect various souvenirs and trinkets for your achievements, alliances, and arenas that you visited. There's a fair amount of lore in here as well. The campaign is different every time you play it. Randomized encounters and a rotating cast ensure that no 2 playthroughs will be the same. You can play this in either VR or flat screen, but obviously I think VR is the way to go. I think it's an absolute must download that everyone should try.
What you need? Operating drones?
The Ranger Lost Tribe is a hack-and-slash fantasy adventure with some stealth elements. Proceed through a creepy world with giant lizard-like monsters living everywhere. Take them all down using a variety of weaponry like a trusty sword and shield, spears, arrows, etc. It features a stealth assassination mechanic. If you're able to teleport behind an enemy, it'll show you an assassination prompt so you know you can soar behind them for a quick kill. The first time I played this, it was mostly the same type of enemy everywhere, but they've added more enemy variety since then, including some spider-like creatures. I hate spiders in VR, but if they don't bother you, then definitely try this. Spellbender is a short RPG where you play a mage in training who learns their first spell. And of course, evil forces show up, so you need to fight them. For a free RPG, I was impressed with the graphics and how much there was to do in here. Now granted, it is short at 12 minutes, but previous to this, I was used to Aken's Call, which was even shorter than this one. The spell you learn is basically a Hadouken spell, and it's very tricky to aim, so most of the time I would just move up close to enemies to fire at them at point-blank range. Besides the combat, there's also some item hunting and exploring as well. So of course it is short, but for a free VR RPG, I was all around impressed. SpiderMan Far From Home VR is basically a short arcade game, but I found it pretty darn fun, especially because you have so many Spidey abilities. Besides the obvious running and climbing up or down walls, you're able to swing very quickly through the city, which is really the best part of the game. And thankfully, there are comfort options if you're prone to motion sickness. The goal is to stop a giant robot from causing mayhem. To do that, you'll have to use your other web abilities, like bring your hands together to create a wall to slow them down, or fire your web slingers very quickly so that they act like bullets. You can beat the main action campaign in about 20 minutes, but there's also a free play mode, where you can just swing around in the city and find collectibles. For a free game, it's fantastic.
The decision is yours. Place your choice in the fire.
Cartoon Network Journeys VR is a narrative set of 3 unique mini-adventures. The only mode of movement is teleporting, so everyone is able to play. All the mini-adventures are well written and designed.
Only unique individuals may pass. We're unique, right?
Each individual journey could be a great free game on their own, but the fact that all 3 come in one bundle makes it even better. I got an hour total of playtime out of this, and it's well worth the download.
So you think you can jest? Well, let's step things up and see who's still laughing.
Run of Mydan. It's a graphically abstract action adventure. Use your hands to fly like Superman in this beautifully geometric dream world. Your goal in each level is to find the Pillars of Light. Each of them has a crystal core that, once destroyed, will extinguish the light. Destroy all the pillars to clear each level. Some pillars will require some strategy to reach them, while others will summon guardians that must be destroyed. And speaking of enemies, you'll find all kinds, from other flying bipeds to small droids. You can play the campaign in single player or co-op, and there's a multiplayer arena as well. Runes: The Forgotten Path. In this heavily narrative adventure game, you play a sorcerer that's forgotten everything about themselves, so you're on a journey of self-discovery to find your way again. This is an interesting mix of different game types. On the one hand, you have lots of character dialogue and story. There's a little bit of magic combat, some puzzle questing, and a small room that you keep returning to throughout the game, which feels like an escape room. This particular part was my favorite. There's a handful of different puzzles to solve in this room, which, like I've said, feels like an escape room. There is a little bit of magic combat, but it's barely sprinkled in until the end of the game. It all finishes with a huge defense battle that's like a wave shooter. I enjoyed playing this, but mostly for the escape room section with the magic-based puzzles. Personally, I would have liked more of that. The game lasts about 2 to 3 hours, and for a free game, it's spectacular. TomatoRush is a classical 2D platforming puzzler. It's a flat-screen game, but it comes with a VR launcher. Personally, I could only get it to work with a keyboard, but it says it supports gamepads. When it first launched, the menu was way below me in the floor. After pressing R on the keyboard, it reset the view, and I was good to go. Be sure to turn the graphics quality on high, otherwise it's pretty blurry. The use of depth is done really well here. It's still a flat game, but there's perspective and parallax with the background and environments. And I can also look left or right to see behind or ahead in the level. This is very well made, and I found it enjoyable to play. If you're a fan of 2D platformers, you must try this. Euterpe Explorer is a chill exploration and research game. Explore a planet's surface to get data on plants and animals that you discover, and then bring it back up to your ship to unlock the data on what you found. After you've done that, go back to the surface again to find even more data. It's a very unique and relaxing game that's a break from the usual action games. If you enjoy Zen exploration and seeing new worlds, then give it a shot. Time to cover some free and fun puzzle games. NaN Industry is a massive puzzle game that really impressed me. The goal is to get various collections of blue cubes from the starting point to the goal, and you do that by building a factory assembly line to transport the blue cubes to where they need to go. At first you'll be dealing with just conveyor belts, but eventually you'll be using many kinds of tools, including even carving out special shapes within groups of blue cubes to be accepted into the goal. But that's just the beginning. You'll have to learn a lot of contraptions, some of which will need to be used to create switches and reactions in your assembly line. I really enjoyed the overall feel and design of this puzzle game, and there is an absolute ton of levels to choose from. It even comes with an in-VR level creator and editor. If you're a puzzle fan, then I highly recommend it. It's an awesome free game. Gravity Architect is a puzzle challenge that's all about gravitational forces. A path of cubes are moving in space, and you need to create and arrange planets to manage the gravitational pull, so the path reaches the goal. One of the most fun parts is sculpting away at a planet you've created to reduce its mass, and therefore its gravitational strength. There's 3 difficulty modes. The harder the difficulty, the smaller the target you're trying to reach. Don't let the simple graphics fool you. This game is addictive and surprisingly fun. Flickblocks is a Tetris game with a few new tricks up its sleeve for VR play. In the center of your room is the main area of shapes, and all around you, Tetris pieces are falling down. Reach out and grab the pieces so you can place them in the main area, similar to normal Tetris. If a piece falls to the ground, it provides a colored highlight on the ground so you can easily spot it. If more than 3 pieces fall onto the ground, then you lose. It's a simple, elegant, and creative spin on Tetris for room-scale VR. Spearmint 1 has you manning a missile launch facility. You'll want to press the button that lets you silence the alarm right away, because that gets really annoying. After powering on the radio, you need to listen to their instructions very carefully to figure out which piece of paper you need to guide you through the missile launch process. It kind of feels like a complex, small escape room game. I found this pretty overwhelming and difficult. But if you enjoy complicated instructions and escape room games, this could be right up your alley. In Albina, you're a dog being sent into space, but the people that sent you have no intention of bringing you back, so you need to find a way to escape from the spacecraft as soon as you can. The end goal is to get the parachute out, but that's obviously easier said than done. While you're trying to figure that out, other disasters are happening around you, like losing cabin pressure, losing oxygen, power going out, etc. So you need to manage all these little disasters while you're trying to figure out how to get to the parachute. It's a well-made and frantic puzzle survival game. Architect is a puzzle game where there's a tiny silhouette claymation character needing to reach the end goal to every level. But the poor little guy has no idea where to go, so you need to guide the character by placing certain golden objects in correct places so the little character knows where to go. Anything that's golden you can move or manipulate, like moving doors, stairways, elevators, etc. It's a simple premise, but you will find this challenging as you have to search a lot to find the correct objects to put in place. It's visually beautiful with great sound design and music. I highly recommend it.
It's got to be.
Storm VR. In this puzzle adventure, you need to survive in the freezing cold. So obviously the goal is to find shelter and get warm, but as you probably suspect, it's a lot easier said than done, and you'll have some puzzles to solve before you can get to safety. For a small free adventure, it's fantastic. Definitely give this one a go. Also note that the only mode of movement is teleportation. In Entangled, you play as a scientist forced into a conflict playing out across parallel universes. You solve mind-bending puzzles that deal with unique problems across multiple dimensions. Like, how do you get an object into the next room without it colliding with objects from an alternate realm? It's a room scale game that requires a space of at least 2.5 by 2.5 meters, because you'll need to physically walk into other rooms and portals into other realities. Children of Fafnir is an adorable little puzzle game that's full of charm. In 7 levels, you need to get all the tiny dragons to reach the drinking lake so they can summon the strength to fly away. Click on a dragon to take control of it like you're using a gamepad, and also directly manipulate other objects with your hands to enable the dragons to reach the goal. Oftentimes, the challenge lies in doing both of those things at the same time. Turtles all the way down. We've all played stacking and balancing challenges before, but never one quite like this. Stack turtles upon one another, all on top of a massive turtle base that walks along rugged terrain. Basically, if you love turtles, you'll be in heaven here. Stack as high as you can until the towers begin to fall. You're allowed 5 falls total. If you stack using opposite colors, then the turtle's grip is better. And I've got to say that some of these turtles really do have an impressive grip. For a unique and creative new stacking game, check it out. Polycube is another Tetris clone, but this one is playable in either VR or flat screen. There's some interesting custom game settings for you to change, most notably the size of the playing grid. If you're a Tetris fan, it's a must download. Reflecto Ray is an exceptionally well-made free puzzle game. You need to guide laser beams by moving mirrors so they reach the targets. You can pull the mirrors toward you and also move their position by hand. But the challenge is that you can't rotate most of the mirrors, so you need to be very intentional on exactly which mirror pieces you choose. The difficulty ramps up when you'll eventually need to reach multiple targets, use laser splitting prisms, and deal with unlocking gateways as well. I really enjoyed playing this. It features a zen atmosphere and a soothing soundtrack as well. I got almost 3 hours of play before reaching the last level, and the last level totally stumped me. For index controllers, I had to manually assign the trigger button in the Steam VR bindings so that I could pull the pieces toward me, which was an easy fix. For a challenging puzzler and a cool atmosphere, it's totally worth a download. Bulos is a color matching game that really surprised me. A sequence of balls are traveling through a level. You have 2 guns, on each gun is a color representing the ball that gun will create. You want to create more balls in the sequence because a set of 3 will make them vanish, and every time you fire the gun, the color of the gun changes. The sequence of balls will continue traveling around you through the level in a series of pipes. If the sequence of balls makes it to the end of the level, then it's game over. What makes this game especially challenging is that your bullets fire pretty slowly, so the travel time between you and the target is hard to estimate sometimes. And there's multiple objectives to juggle as well, because once you create a successful set of 3, a star will shoot out. If you shoot that star, you get bonus points, and after you shoot stars, even better bonuses will fire up out of pipes for you to shoot as well. So it's always tempting to go for the stars or the other bonuses, which distracted me from the main goal of taking away the sequence. As you proceed through greater and greater levels, there will be more colors to deal with and things will speed up as well. Before I played this game, I didn't think there would be much to it, but playing it, I was quite surprised, and I had a lot of fun. Belko VR, an escape room experiment. You're trapped inside an office, and you need to find a way to escape before you're killed. It's a small space, but you'll need to do lots of searching and sleuthing to make it out alive. This game is for mature audiences as there's lots of language and graphic violence. Also, if you have arachnophobia, be warned that there is a surprise tarantula in there. Here's some games that will really get you moving. Obstacle course games. Cube Dancer is a dance-off between you and 3 different AI robot personalities. The robots will send challenge cubes your way, either from their hands or their head, and you need to touch those cubes in response. This game is merciless, requiring quick thinking and very large, sweeping movements. It's a serious challenge, and for a free game, I found it surprisingly polished as well. If you have a large room scale and enjoy rhythm games, it's a must-play. T for God is part obstacle course and part exploration shooting game. It uses impossible spaces and procedurally generated level layouts to allow infinite movement within your room scale. Make your way through the level shooting a variety of robots before they can shoot you. After killing robots, you want to collect their energy. Energy is what you use for ammunition in your weapons and your shields. Walking through the levels is super fun. The pathways are designed really well, and after a while, your brain almost believes that you actually are traveling through many different spaces. Spellbound Spire features the same movement system as T for God, but the gameplay itself is quite different, since this is an exploration puzzle adventure. It also keeps adding new gameplay mechanics and new puzzle challenges every step of the way. Just when I thought I've seen it all, the game surprises me with even more ingenuity and creativity. And besides the impressive puzzle design, the ambience and architecture are really fun to take in. I felt like I was actually exploring a new magical world. It recommends a play space of 3 meters by 3 meters, but most people don't have that, so to play with less space, it has a unique feature called boosted movement, so every move you make gets multiplied by a value that ensures you can play in a smaller space. For me personally, the effect felt subtle and quite natural. You absolutely have to play this game. It took me about 40 minutes to beat it the first time I played, and there's an Easter egg that incentivizes you to play the game a second time. Spellbound Spire is a must-have in your library. Jupitergrad Sneaky Peeky is a free sampler of the grappling hook swinging game Jupitergrad. It features the movement tutorial from the main game, and 3 time attack levels from the base game as well. Give this small sampler a go for a great taste of what the main game has to offer. Good luck, comrade! Free Climb is an ice climbing game that's actually a speedrun challenge. At the beginning of every time you play, you get to see your last high score so you can try and beat it. Or obviously, if you play this as a party game, you can try and beat your friend's high score. The graphics are superb. They're the best in any climbing game I've ever seen. If you enjoy climbing VR games, then you have to try this. Sneak and Peek is a stealth obstacle course game, which is really all about precision teleporting. You have to get to the end of the level without being seen by any of the robots or triggering any of the lasers. To get through lasers, you'll have to crouch low to the ground if there's a gap on the ground, or stand up to avoid lasers on the ground. On your left is a minimap which shows you the line of sight that the robot guards have, and using the minimap is critical to make sure your timing is correct so you can avoid all of the line of sights of the guards and lasers. Polyrunner is an endless runner obstacle course game with multiple control schemes to choose from, and all within a nice clean visual style. Now it's time to cover some asymmetrical multiplayer games, where others can play with you on the same PC. Nova Swarm is a space battle game with 1 player in VR and up to 4 people playing on the PC using gamepads. You can also fill in with AI bots instead of other players. The VR player has the main ship in the middle of the arena, and the 4 other players are trying to destroy the VR player. The PC player ships are invisible unless they're attacking. There's actually a lot beneath the surface of this game: multiple weapons, power-ups, defense modes, and rules. All of the detailed info is available at the game's website below. This is a fantastic game for a group of friends at your next VR party. Hango VR is a fast-paced collaborative party game. You wake up at your friend's place after a crazy party and it's a huge mess. Unfortunately, your friend's parents are coming home in a few minutes. So all of you have to work together to fix the place. The VR player is responsible for cleaning everything up, while 1 or more people on the PC look at photos of the room that show where everything should go. It's a short game, but really creative and fun. I Can Gun can be played as a single-player game or as an asymmetrical multiplayer game. It's a shooting game that pits you against evil gun turrets. The gun turrets show no mercy and kill you very quickly. So you need to be extra aware and sneaky if you hope to survive. The asynchronous multiplayer allows a team of 2, where 1 person plays in VR and another playing on the PC with keyboard and mouse. Team up against the evil bots, or just shoot each other. Either way. Nemesis Perspective is a frantic David vs. Goliath game. The VR player is a giant monster, and the second player on the PC using a gamepad is a tiny person. The monster VR player is trying to slap, squish, and kill the tiny player, but the tiny player is fast and has superpowers. Now let's move on to some relaxing games. In Aircar, you get to pilot a flying car through a futuristic cityscape. There are very simple goals to aim for if you want something to do, like finding secret landing pads, but it's pretty much just a free-flying Zen experience. And for a Zen flying experience, it's exceptional, because the visuals are very good looking and the audio soundscape is incredibly beautiful. Even though you'll wish there was more to do, it's still a mesmerizing experience. Puppy Chef Academy was once a paid game, but now it's free. It's a cooking game with a ton of role-playing story. You're a newcomer to a cooking school and you're trying to fit in. You become friends with another student and also try to excel at the cooking curriculum. This game is an interesting mix because I initially expected it to be mostly cooking with a little bit of story, but it's actually the other way around. I found the vast majority of the game to be role-playing storyline. The cooking portions themselves are straightforward and easy to do. There's no measuring of ingredients. But even though the cooking portions were relatively easy, I still enjoyed them. They're my favorite part of the game. I would call this a family-friendly visual novel with cooking elements sprinkled in. If that sounds like your cup of tea, then definitely check it out. Go for a Walk is a zen and abstract music experience. Inside a minimally designed world, you guide a curious canine through a musical landscape. You control the canine's direction with a laser pointer, and whenever you hover your other laser over something in the environment, it'll contribute to the musical soundscape. The objects will create different sounds depending on if you simply hover or click the object. You can also use the grip button to move objects around. The way I just described it might make it sound boring, but it's absolutely the opposite. It's rather entrancing. I quickly lost track of time wandering in here. I highly recommend it. Google Earth VR. To state the obvious, this allows you to view the entire Google Earth database in VR. The amount of freedom you'll feel inside this is really incredible, and zooming out to witness the curvature of the Earth is truly spellbinding. You owe it to yourself to experience this. There's nothing else like it. Cosmic Sugar is a zen, trippy, and beautiful interactive particle experience. On each of your hands, you can choose an interaction mode with how you play with the particles. This free version only allows 2 tools. If you want the rest of the tools, those are available through DLC. But there's still plenty of fun to be had in this free version. After you choose a tool, use the trigger button to apply that force. And the forces are pressure sensitive with the trigger button. This may look relatively simple in video footage, but playing this in VR is really special. I highly recommend you try this yourself. Horizon Beyond is a fantastical airship flying adventure. Sail above the clouds in a beautiful journey where you'll meet all kinds of creatures and gorgeous environments. It's an overall relaxing experience, but there are a couple of sudden surprises. You sail forward by pulling down on the big ring on your right, but thankfully there's a hook you can use to keep moving forward continually. If some hungry birds give you company, you can do some fishing to feed them. It's unfortunately short. I beat it in about 15 minutes, but it's fantastic and beautiful. It requires a room scale of 3 meters by 2 meters, and if you have enough room, then it's a must play. Blossom is a simple, relaxing VR game where you paint flowers onto a tree. No rules, no objective, no timer, just a living canvas in a peaceful environment. On each hand, you can choose which color of flower to paint, and you can repaint the flowers as well. As you paint, the environment will change seasons all around you. You'll need a sizable room scale to reach all the branches. I hit my walls pretty frequently trying to reach all of them. For a simple and relaxing experience, it's very well made. A shopping trip to Eclantor. It's your hidden object hunting dream come true. Search through a beautiful miniature town looking for 15 specific items. Click on buildings to remove the walls to look inside and find various fantasy characters going about their business. Little text pop-ups give a little bit of story on that place as well. The items you're looking for aren't highlighted and don't stand out, so you really need to search and compare with the item list to find them. And sometimes you'll need to complete a miniature puzzle before an item is revealed. It's a simple premise, but the atmosphere and characters are brimming with charm and personality. It's a delightful little searching game. Guildford Castle VR is the best virtual tourism experience that I've tried so far. You start out in the current world, seeing the historical site of Guildford Castle in England, but as you explore and interact with the small signs, you'll be presented with audio narration that explains what happened here, and will also bring you back in time to see how it was. I just love virtual tourism. If you do too, then you simply must try this for yourself. And now some crafting games, where you create and assemble things with your hands. Order Up is a multitasking burger assembly speed challenge. Customers walk up to your little burger stand, they specify the burger they want, and you have to make the correct burger in the right temperature for all the customers. For a free burger crafting challenge, it's really fun, and a great choice for VR newcomers as well. Waltz of the Wizard is a timeless classic that's received many massive updates over the years to become a full-paid game, but the legacy demo is still available on Steam for free. Combine various ingredients into the bowl in front of you to create magic spells and transform the world around you. Just try different ingredients to experiment and see what happens. There's also musical spells that, when played correctly, will transport you temporarily to other realms. It's a lot of fun to just freely play in this sandbox, seeing all the magical spells you can discover. Short Circuit VR is an electronics lab simulator. Using a variety of components, you can build your own electronic circuits. There's optional challenges to complete, or just enjoy making whatever you want. If you haven't heard, Tiltbrush has become open source, and there's now a free fork available for everyone by the name of OpenBrush. The original Tiltbrush is one of those VR staples that most of you have probably already experienced, but if you haven't, you're in for a real treat. All the painting and creation tools are really intuitive. You'll be up and painting in no time. As far as I can tell, all the original brushes and paint modes are at your disposal, and some of the advanced features have been reintroduced in the free version. Tilt Brush was a groundbreaking and very fun VR creative tool, and now that the core functionality has become free for everyone, you absolutely must download this and experience it for yourself if you haven't before. It's a must-have in your library. Locomancer. It's a very powerful model train sandbox. Create your own custom miniature train worlds from a variety of cars, tracks, scenery, landscapes, and more. All the tools are intuitively designed and pretty satisfying to use, like the way you open up drawers to access the build menu, spraying with the painting tool, etc. One thing that I thought was especially creative is the save and load feature. Flip up the top of the toolbox to access all the photos and choose a photo to load one of the pre-built scenes that come with the game. To save your own scene, take a picture with the camera. You can move via teleporting or by dragging the world around you. But you don't have to stay life-sized, you can shrink down into the scale of your miniature world to witness it firsthand. And of course, you can ride and control the trains yourself. There's co-op multiplayer as well, so you can build train worlds with a friend. This is an outstanding model train sandbox that's really enjoyable. You could easily lose yourself for days in here. Help is a very short game, but it makes up for it in charm. You're trying to help these little robots repair their ship, and the presentation and interactivity make this a delight to play. And finally, a miscellaneous category for games that defy a single genre. Dire is an action-packed racing game. It's like if the Mad Max and Sin City movies had a baby. You're racing forward inside an apocalyptic wasteland and a vicious sandstorm is coming up behind you. But of course there are bad guys on your tail as well, so you need to keep going as fast as you can to avoid getting sucked up by the sandstorm, as well as trying to run the bad guys off the road. This game is so fresh and different from the rest on this list, but it's also incredibly challenging. And of course, I have to mention The Lab. This is the original VR variety game made by Valve. It was released 6 years ago, which in VR terms is practically a lifetime. But many of these minigames are still really fun to play even today. It features the original Longbow game, which has been emulated many times by other games. Robot Repair is an interactive film starring the bots from Portal, and is one of the best things to show to VR newcomers. My personal favorite is the arcade shooter Cortex. If you haven't played The Lab yet, you absolutely have to. You don't know what you're missing. Tap House VR is an arcadey bartending simulator. Patrons come up to your bar asking for specific drinks poured in particular glasses. Some will even ask for mixed drinks in special proportions. The game features a telekinetic retrieval ability that allows you to point at a distant object and zing it to your hand, which is incredibly useful when things get hectic in the bar. This game is highly polished, a very well-made free game. Galaxy Forces VR. Control a tiny ship in very dangerous environments. There's 2 play modes. In race mode, you need to beat the clock to get the fastest time, and in the mission mode, you transport cargo from multiple green platforms to arrive at the blue platforms, all done in a narrow cave space filled with many dangers. This game is very challenging. It plays like a lunar lander game in the way that you have to land on platforms to transport the cargo. And you can die very quickly, so I found this extremely difficult. But the gameplay is surprisingly addictive. I kept on wanting to try just one more time, no matter how often I died a clumsy death. Coliseum Soccer is a richly detailed table soccer simulator with some extra sci-fi features sprinkled in. It behaves just like the real-life version. Grip the handles and spin your miniature guys to kick the ball into the goal. The extra sci-fi elements include controlling a roaming player that can detach and run through the board, a massive death ball, shields, and more. It's single player only. Against the AI, there's multiple difficulty modes, and there's also a 2 versus 2 mode where you have an AI friend on your side so you don't have to keep switching positions. One thing to note if you're using index controllers is that the grip won't grab the handles like you would expect. You need to shift position just once, and then your hands will snap into place and you'll be in control. Bulk Dominoes VR Kinetic Rush is your domino toppling dream come true. While in build mode, you can place dominoes one at a time, but it's much more fun to simply click and drag to create a path of dominoes you want. There are tracks you can place and expand, as well as pre-built bridges and props. There are multiple kinds of dominoes to choose from. After you build them, you can also paint them to give your domino course some real personality. There's a save and load feature with lots of save slots. If you enjoy dominoes, then you simply must try this. It's a great little free game. The Book of Distance is an incredibly well-made interactive short film. It tells the story of Yonezo Okita, who left his home of Hiroshima, Japan to start a new life in Canada in 1935. The story is told by his grandson, as he guides us through the story like a magical theater production that unfolds all around you. There's quite a bit of interaction in here. It's not a passive experience.
I wonder how he felt exchanging letters with people so far away, in a place he could only imagine.
Runtime is about 30 minutes, and it's really amazing. I highly recommend it. Disco Destruction. You are now the DJ of a small Miami disco, and it's up to you to get this struggling venue back on its feet again. You need to read the customers' moods and play the correct music to keep them dancing. The longer they dance, the more money you make. With more funding, you can buy better disc packs, power-ups, or decorations. If you don't like the built-in soundtrack, you can add your own custom music to the game, which is a pretty cool feature. This is a one-of-a-kind VR game. Even if you think you won't like this, I say give it a shot because the challenge of live mixing music while reading a crowd is something I find to be really different and novel to play. Download this and take for a spin, a nice change from the usual games we see these days. I've tried paid Salvador Dali experiences before, but Dreams of Dali is a free experience that's better than all of them. And one of the best free artwork VR journeys out there. It's a little short, but really beautiful and not an experience to be missed. Unfortunately, Windows Mixed Reality is not supported. Most of the museums that you'll find in VR are just short demos or small samplers. But with Versailles VR The Palace is Yours, you get to explore the entirety of the Palace of Versailles. I find the scope and quality of this to be really impressive, and I'm rather surprised that people don't seem to talk about it, especially since it's free. You can turn on the audio guide, which will narrate what each room is for, but they don't narrate each individual piece.
The bedchamber is the most important room in the Queen's state apartments, and was where the sovereign spent most of her time.
There's a night mode that will change the ambience and make the fireplaces light up. And you can enable 3D chandeliers for a little more immersion. I'm so happy to finally see a full and complete museum in VR.
The Coronation Chamber owes its name to the emblematic monumental painting of the coronation of Napoleon.
Some 35,000 artworks are displayed here, including a number of famous masterpieces.
Mona Lisa Beyond the Glass begins as a very brief tour of the Louvre Museum. After roaming the exterior a bit, going inside you get to sample a few other pieces of artwork before going on to the main event, which is the Mona Lisa. Depending on how long you stop and observe the intermediate artwork before going on to the main event, this experience could last you between 10 to 15 minutes. I didn't exactly know what to expect going into this, but I gotta say I was really impressed. There's a lot of surprises in here, and I recommend it for everyone. Il Divino, Michelangelo's Sistine Ceiling in VR. You get to experience a photorealistic tour of the famous Sistine Chapel ceiling. The details and events behind how this was made is fascinating. When you first launch it, you need to choose the mode you want on the desktop. Choose between guided tour or free roam. The guided tour contains the free roam mode after an introduction, so either way you're getting the free roam mode. There's so much to learn and discover in here. There are over 100 clickable elements that will give you narrated details about those individual pieces.
This entire scene gravitates around God's gesture. He is bringing Eve forth from the side of Adam, who is fast asleep.
I really love experiences like these that let you see amazing parts of the world without leaving your home. Amends VR is an interactive short film. It tells the story about a mother, her child, and the difficulties they face. It's emotionally very heavy, and sometimes even jarring. But overall, I was really impressed by this experience. I found it to be really powerful. Runtime is about 10 minutes. TSA Frisky. In here you take on the role of a TSA agent deciding who should and should not be able to fly. It's a casual hunting, multitasking, and memorization challenge. For a casual challenge, I think this provides a lot of unique charm. I like how lighthearted and silly everything feels in the game. Diorama Worlds. It's a unique crafting and creation game for a niche audience. It's a diorama maker's dream come true, which I suppose is the obvious thing to say, but I really mean that. This isn't normally my cup of tea, but the younger me who loved playing with Legos and tinkering with things would have just died at the chance to play this in VR. It's also fun to simply open the pre-built scenes that come bundled with it. There doesn't seem to be any character or object animation possible, but there are some animated effects like the gunfire you see here. So if you like dioramas or tinkering with small models, then you should definitely check it out. It feels like there haven't been very many new VR films these days, especially ever since Google Spotlight Stories closed its doors. But thankfully, Green Fairy VR is here to fill that need with great gusto and personality. It's a family-friendly adventure about the Green Fairy's journey to appreciate her unique green glow. It's a standing height experience, and you'll need to turn all around you to see everything played out. If you're a fan of short VR films, then it's a must download. Runtime is about 12 minutes. Museum of Other Realities is an immersive art showcase museum that's only possible in VR. It offers a growing collection of mind-bending VR artwork and interactables. The museum really utilizes all the new possibilities that VR artwork can do, like being able to shrink down into a small size to see the exhibit up close, interactable exhibits that you're encouraged to play in without getting in trouble, and clever use of portals, which for me does not get old. The artwork on display is changing all the time, so you can keep coming back to see what's new and fresh. You can appreciate it all by yourself in single player, or meet others in the museum in multiplayer. For a free VR art museum, it's outstanding and well worth your time.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. It's an interactive narrative experience based on the cult short story by H.P. Lovecraft. Point and click to advance the story scene by scene, and also be on the lookout for hidden trivia. Clicking on those will fill you in with historical facts, and I found those pretty interesting. The voice acting is excellent, and the visuals are great too.
So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
There's some really spooky moments, and they're well crafted with a soundtrack that builds lots of tension. For a free narrative journey, this is outstanding. Playtime is about 30 minutes.
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
Castle Defender VR is a defense game with a creative mix of mechanics, the likes of which I haven't seen before. You're a giant protecting your castle in the middle of an island, and pirate ships are unloading soldiers all around you trying to storm your castle. You have 4 things that you can summon: knights, archers, healing potions, and bombs. All 4 of those things are replenished for free with a timer that you have to wait for. Once something is ready, you can grab it and toss it into the battlefield. So you're not controlling your units, because once you throw them in the battlefield, they work on their own, but you do have to think about resource management and timing. I found this both refreshing and fun, and I recommend it. Portable Emulator. It's a handheld retro gaming emulator that you can summon and play within any other VR world. This emulator is free for everyone to download. Now you might think that playing a game within a game sounds silly, but I've really enjoyed playing retro games within a variety of different VR environments. For example, I find Final Fantasy VI to be really fun to play within the rainy weather of Aircar. And I've also liked playing original Game Boy games while exploring in Fallout. It almost feels like an advanced Pip-Boy that you carry around. You summon the emulator by doing a specific gesture with your hands. Repeating the same gesture will make the emulator go away and also pause your game. Lately, some of my free time has been spent making custom textures for the emulator to fit different environments, like a black metal version for Aircar, or a wasteland version for Fallout. I feel like Portable Emulator gives a glimpse into what the future of VR experiences could be. Like, will we have multiple portals all around us, similar to how we switch and use multiple apps on our desktop computers? In Defenestration, you're inside an average office. But today is your lucky day because you need to rack up a huge debt by breaking as much expensive stuff as you can by throwing it out the window to break it and hopefully get more damage by harming passersby. But the walkers are probably technically robots. Anyway, it's a casual destruction game. Grab whatever you can in the office and toss it out the window to cause mayhem and rack up a lot of damage. Play this after a rough day at the office. Technically a game is a trippy and dreamlike experience that pays homage to the classic Windows days of cheesy graphics and floppy drives. The fun inside this game is discovering for yourself how things go, so I don't want to spoil it. But if you have some nostalgia for the old Windows 3.1 days, like I think most of you do, then I recommend it. In Lift, you're an elevator operator in the prestigious Westwind Hotel. Open and close the elevator doors, communicate with the guests via gesture motions.
Sorry, you were just joking around, right?
Drop them off where they want to go, and then pick up the next passenger. It features a cute atmosphere with good sound design and good voice acting as well. Home, a VR spacewalk, is visually really impressive. You get to play as a new astronaut doing some stuff in space. I do pretty well with nausea and motion sickness these days, but this had me feeling a little nauseous at the end. If you're not prone to motion sick, I highly recommend it. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. See ya!